Again, so using MA to factor, you're going to determine the M and the A. You determine the M first. You do that by looking at your first coefficient and your third coefficient. So if I say coefficient, terms, and variables, terms is going to be the number and variable together, right? So then what's the variables are the letters. So what's left over? The coefficient's going to be the what?
Let it equal. No.
If I give you this, if I give you 10e squared, what's the coefficient?
No, you forgot to move the Denisha picture down to Tuesday.
I'm not worried about that. So what's the coefficient?
Oh, the coefficient would be, wouldn't it be the 2? E squared?
That would be the exponent.
Oh, wait, the coefficient would be E?
The e would be the variable.
Okay, then the 10.
So the 10 would be the coefficient. So the coefficient is just the number without any of the variables or exponents, okay? So M, you take your first coefficient, so your first number, and you multiply it by your third number. So that little asterisk looking thing right there means to multiply. Then your A is going to be your second coefficient. So it's going to be your second number. Then we have to determine what can I multiply together to get the M and add together to get to the A. I'm going to give you a cheat sheet for that in just a second. Okay? Step 2. I just said you find the numbers that multiply to M and add to A. Then step 3, we're going to take our terms and we're going to write the areas in each of the boxes using the numbers from step 2 for the top and right bottom left boxes. We'll talk about that in a second. 4, we're then going to factor the top row of the rectangles using the greatest common factor. And then step 5, we complete the model. You are not doing anything new today besides step 1. Okay? The only thing new that you're doing is step 1. You did step 2. You guys all took the quiz on step 2 and passed it. You guys have done step 3 for the most part, besides the second part. You've done step 4 and you've done step 5. So it's just one little new thing added in. So with that said, we're going to go to our first example problem. So we're doing our first example problem. So on your note sheet, you have 3 terms up here. You have 10e squared plus 23e plus 6. Now, we know that these 3 terms represents the area of my rectangle because there are no parentheses around it. But looking at my rectangle, I have 4 sections. How many terms do I have? 3. So remember, the 23e is split between the upper right and the bottom left. So we have to determine what numbers go in there and what the area is going to be. That's where the MA, remember how I said we're going to do a shortcut instead of doing the guesswork?
Yeah.
That's where we're going to find the M and the A. So according to your notes, it says determine the M and A. So we're going to determine the M by looking at our first coefficient and our third coefficient. So it's our first number and our third number. So on your note sheet, you're going to come over and you're going to put your M. So M equals, so my first coefficient is 10, and we're going to multiply it by our second coefficient, or excuse me, our third coefficient, which is 6. So 10 times 6 is 60. Okay. I'm going to continue following my notes for step 1. It says now A is the second coefficient. So what's my second number up here in my 3 terms? 23. So my A is going to be that second number. So my A, I'm going to come over here, right under M, and put 23. Now, you guys ready for your cheat sheet?
Yeah.
In the past, I've made you guys find your factor pairs. So, if we are doing the M, we would first have to find the factor pairs of what? The M or the A? Factor means multiply.
A.
So if I'm going to multiply, I'd have to find the factor pairs of which number?
A.
M. So I'd find all the factor pairs of 60. So 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, and so forth. However, since you all passed that quiz, with the exception of Keyshawn, which you're going to have to take because you just haven't taken it, I am going to give you the factor pair sheet. So numbers 1 through 100, and then some other numbers that we're going to use, I have listed all of the factor pairs. So you don't have to sit there and go through your head and think, okay, what all can I multiply together to get 60? You have a little cheat sheet.
Did you copy
So-
and paste that?
With this factor pair sheet, you are going to look
Okay.
at the number 60. So find where it says 60.
That's a lot.
What the heck? Whoa.
Hey guys, I didn't say talk about it. I said find it. So find where it says 60. Now, all those numbers multiply together to get 60. So now you need to determine your A. Which of those factors can I now add together to get 23? So, say it again. So that's going to be my MA. It's going to be 3 and 20. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to write it underneath here. And I'm going to circle it because I'm going to use that number. So no longer am I going to make you guys write all your factor pairs out because you have the factor pair sheet. But I do want to see the work that I have up on the notes. I need to see on your quizzes, tests, and so forth. So the work that I show, I need to see. Now, so at this point on our notes, we've completed step 1 and we've completed step 2. So now we need to go to step 3. Step 3 says write the areas in each of the boxes. So we're going to write the areas in each of the boxes. However, this is the other new part you're learning. Using the numbers from step 2, you're going to write these two areas in the upper right and the bottom left. Okay? So we know where these areas all go. So let's take a look. What's my first area here? So I'm going to write that in. Okay? We know that 23E is a split between this box and this box. Well, we found the split number. The split number is our MA, right? 3 and 20. Now, how I do it to make factoring easier, and I think this would be a good thing for you guys to do too, put your smaller number first. It's going to make finding the greatest common factor so much easier. So I'm going to put my 3 in my upper right-hand box. So I'm going to put my 3. So that's the area of this rectangle. And then my larger number 20, I'm going to put my lower left-hand box. Now, 20 plus 3 equals 23. What variable do these two need to have, though?
E.
An E. So I'm just going to go ahead and tack that E onto each of them. All right. So I have my area for my first section, second section, third section. What's the area for the fourth? 6. Good. So now I have step 3 completed. So now I'm going to go to step 4. Step 4 says, factor the top row of the rectangles using the greatest common factor. Well, this is my top, excuse me. This is the top row of my rectangle, right? So I'm going to take these two numbers here and find the greatest common factor. Now, you may need to use your other blue cheat sheet to help with your prime numbers, so you may have to have both of your cheat sheets out. So I'm going to come over here to the right. I'm going to list 10, and I'm going to list 3. What are your prime factors for 10?
2 and 5.
What are your prime factors for 3?
1 and 3.
Okay, so what number is 10 and 3 going to share?
1.
1. So the greatest common factor for 10e squared and 3e is going to be 1, but we can't forget about our variables. You have e squared and e. Which of those are smaller? E squared or e? E. So the greatest common factor is going to be 1e. Now, don't forget, once you find the greatest common factor, that becomes the height of the first rectangle. Bless you.
Thank you.
So now that I know the height of the first rectangle, I can, step 5, complete the area model. Because if I know the height and I know the area, I can then find out the, what am I missing? If I have the height and the area, I can find the width. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my height for each section. So 1e times something, 1e times something, and I'm going to figure out what the width or that something is now. So 1 times what gets me to 10?
10E.
Okay, now I have 1e up here, but I end up with 2. So I'm going from 1 to 2. So how many more do I need? 1. So that is the width of the rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and label the width up above. Now, if that's the width up above, it's also going to be the width of the rectangle directly below it. Remember, height goes first, then width. So when I bring down that number at the bottom for my width, whoops, I'm going to bring down 10e. So if this is the width of this rectangle, it's going to be the rectangle above it and below it. Width goes second. All right? Now let's find the width of my second rectangle. So 1 times what gets me to 3? 1 times what equals 3? I think I heard it. I just didn't hear it. 3. I have 1e up here and I have 1e down here. Do I need any more?
No.
So the width of this rectangle is 3, meaning the rectangle directly below it, its width is what? 3. So now I need to determine, so what am I missing? So I have width, I have height. What am I missing?
You're missing another height.
I'm missing another height. So then you stop and think. What times 10 equals 20? 2. So if I plug in 2 here, that'll equal 20. If I plug in 2 times 3, will that equal 6?
Yeah.
So my answer is
2.
2. So my height is 2. So I'll make sure I label it. Now, you're almost done.
Almost.
The very last part is then going to be to fill in the blanks.
Oh yeah.
I already finished.
Okay? So what's my height?
1e
2.
plus 2.
My width?
Yeah. 10 and 3.
And that's it. This is the last lesson. Okay? We're not going to learn another new lesson the rest of the year. This is it. I might throw some negatives at you guys, but we're not going to learn any more new steps. Okay? Okay. So, we have 2 more examples to get through. So let's take a look at the next example. You have 10f squared plus 19f plus 6. Nico, can you pick that up for me, please? Use your note sheet. Complete step 1. So if I'm going to complete step 1, the first thing I need to do is determine what, Dylan? No, what's step 1 on your notes say? Okay, so how do you find your m? Well, explain to me. Tell me what your notes say as far as determining what the m is.
First coefficient, third coefficient.
What do we do with them?
Find the numbers that multiply it.
Yeah, so we're going to find our first coefficient and multiply it by our third coefficient. I'm not done picking on you quite yet. So what's our first coefficient? Okay, so I'm going to have 10. And you said I'm going to multiply. What's our third coefficient?
6,
Good. Which equals what, Dylan?
60.
Okay. Once I find my m, I now need to determine my a. Paige, how do I determine my a? That would be what the MA is. How do I determine A? Look at your notes. What's A? How do I find what the A is? Yeah, it's my second coefficient, which is 19. Now, I'm ready to move on to step 2. What's step 2 say, Nico? Grab your notes out from yesterday.
Find the numbers that multiply to add A.
Okay, so find the numbers that multiply together to get your m, but then you can add together to get 19. So this is where your new cheat sheet comes into play. You're going to use your factor pair sheets. So in your factor pair, you're going to use your m, which is 60. So go to your factor pairs of 60 and look through there and see which ones add together to get 19.
415.
Okay, so I'm going to list that right underneath. So 4 and 15. So if I multiply 4 times 15, I'll get 60, my m. If I add 4 plus 15, I get 19, my a. So step 1 is complete. Step 2 is complete. Amaya, what's step 3?
Write the areas
Okay? So you failed to put some of your notes down.
No, you didn't.
Yes, you did. You should have had in the upper right box and the bottom left box. So before we get to that, what's the area of my first rectangle?
I messed up.
10. 10x squared.
I'm hearing you. Give me just a second. What'd you mess up with? Oh, you sure did. So 10x squared. What's the area of my second rectangle going to be? So what's the area of this rectangle going to be?
Don't know.
We do know now.
19.
No?
No.
Remember, 4.
Yeah.
This is where the 4 and the 5, the MA method, comes into play. It breaks down that 19F. It lets us know how to just divide that between the two rectangles. Now, if you put the 15 first and you factor it right, will your answer still be the correct answer? Yeah, you'll still get the right answer, but the sake of making it easier, again, use your smaller number first. Because our smaller number is 4. We're going to plug in the 4. What variable do we need to attach to it? Okay. My bottom left area is going to be what then? And what variable needs to be with it?
F.
Because 15 plus 4 would just get us 19. We need to get to 19F, so we're going to put the variables with it. And my last area? 6. Okay. So now we have step 3 completed. So, found my M, found my A, I found my MA, I found the areas, so I'm ready to move to step 4. Alyssa, what does step 4 say to do?
On the thing?
Yep, on your notes.
Oh. Factor the top row of the rectangle within the piece.
Okay, so we're going to factor the top row of the rectangle. So these two numbers here. So we're going to find the greatest common factor for the number 10 and 4. So this is where we use our prime factorization sheet. What are our prime numbers for 10?
2 and 5.
2 and 5.
4 would be 2 and 2.
And 4 would be 2 and 2. So the pair that they share is
2.
2. So So the greatest common factor will be 2. We're not done yet because we have to look at our variables. What variable do they share? Nico, open your eyes, please. What variable do they share?
Okay.
F. Because we're going to use the variable with the smallest exponent, F. Step 4 is complete. Now I'm ready to move to the final step, which just says go ahead and solve. Fill out the rest of the model. So you know how to do this because you know the height, you know the area, so then we can figure out what the width is. So I'm going to go put my height in for each rectangle. So 2F times something, 2F times something. So now I'm going to figure out what that something is. I'm going to figure out what that width is. So 2 times what gets me to 10?
5.
Okay. I have 1 F up here. I have 2 in my answer, so I need to put 1 more F in for the width. So the width is 5F. Now, if the width is 5F up above, it's also going to be the width directly below. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop that down. I like to label everything all at once so I don't forget anything. Okay? So I found the width of my first and third. Now I need to find the width of my second and fourth rectangle. So 2F times what will get me to 4F? So 2 times what equals
2.
2 times what equals 4? 2. I have 1F here. Do I need another one?
No.
Nah. So my width is, bless you, 2. So I'm going to bring that width directly down. So what do I still need to find yet? The height of my bottom row. So what times 5F will be 15F? And then you can multiply it by 2 to get 6. 3. So the height of my bottom rectangles are going to be 3. And I'm almost done. Now I just fill in the blanks. So the height times the width. So what's my height?
2F plus 3.
And my width.
5F plus 2.
Okay. So So let's pretend that you wanted to make it harder on yourselves, and you put your 15F up here and your 4F down here. You'll get the same answer as long as you factored everything out right. The only thing that will be different, your answer will look like this. Do you see how they just flip?
Yeah.
So your answer, so if you would do that on your quiz or your test, you would not lose points, okay? So if your answer would be flipped and you showed all your work accurately and you did all the steps correctly, you would still receive full credit. I'm not going to take points off if you don't do it my way this time, okay? This time. All right.
Oh, Miss Lizzie, my grandma was happy about my thing.
That's a big thing. That's a good thing. You did a great job. All right. Last example. Now, this example doesn't look like our other examples, but we're doing the exact same steps. This time, I'm just not giving you the blanks to fill in. You're going to fill in the blanks on your own. So we're following the same steps 1 through 5, and then we're still going to write the answer, but instead of writing the answer in front, we're going to write it behind. And what's our answer going to have? It's going to have, well, this is the area. I just flipped the, because there's no parentheses, so this is the area. So I'm going to find the height and the width. So if I'm going to find the height and the width, what are they going to be separated with? Parentheses. All right. I want you guys to take a couple of minutes and work this one independently. I'm going to come around and check your progress.
Okay.
I want you to try to do this as much as you can on your own. Refer to your notes. Okay. You guys know how to do this. The biggest thing that's throwing you for a loop is the MA. So step 1 says to determine what your M is. So how do I figure out what my M is? Raise your hand if you know. How do I figure out what my M is going to be?
4 times 2.
Your first coefficient times your third coefficient. So 4 times 2, which equals?
8.
Now I need to find what my A is. According to my notes, what is my A? 9. So, before I gave you the cheat sheets, M means to multiply, right? So I would have to think of all my factor pairs for 8. But you don't have to do that anymore because I gave you that cheat sheet. So find your factor pairs for 8. So go to your factor pair cheat sheet and find 8. Everybody get their factor pair worksheet and find 8. Put your finger on 8. Now, with those factor pairs, which of those can you then add together to get 9?
1 and 8.
1 and 8. So that's my MA. So you've determined and completed step 1 and step 2. Step 3 says that we're going to put our areas in for our area model. Our MA is going to be the area for my upper right box and my bottom left box. I told you guys to put the smaller number in our upper right corner. So what's my smaller number here?
1.
So I'm going to put equals 1, and my bottom number then will be 8. What variable does 1 and 8 have to have? Because you're going to equal 9, but you need 9 what? G. So what variable am I going to put with that 8 and 1? A G. Okay. So the area is split of this middle. So now I have to plug this area in and this area in the proper places. So what's the area of my first section here?
42.
Okay. Then what's the area of my bottom right?
2.
Okay. That's step 3. So it's like following a recipe. I did step 1, step 2, step 3. I go to the next step. Step 4. Step 4 tells me to find the greatest common factor of the top row of my rectangle. So my greatest common factor of my top row. So I'm going to have to find the greatest common factor for 4 and 1. Well, just looking at it, if the number is 1, what's my greatest common factor going to be? 1. You also have to take into account the variables. What variable does 4 and 1 both share?
G.
G. Now, G to the second or G to the first? Which one's smaller?
G.
Just G or G to the first. So that's my greatest common factor, which becomes the height. So now I know the height, I know the area, I can now determine what my width is going to be. So at this point, all you guys have to do is fill out the rest of your area model. We've been doing this for a long time. So I'm going to plug my height times something, my height times something. Okay? So 1 times what equals 4? 4. I have a G, 1 G here, but I need 2. So how many more G's does my 4 have to have? So I'm going to plug just a G. That is now my, what's that 4G represent? My width. So I'm going to bring that directly up. I can also do what with that width? Bring it down because it is the width of the rectangle directly below it. Okay. So now I can move to the next one. I can find the width of my second rectangle. 1 times what equals 1? 1. I have 1G here. My answer has 1G. Do I need any more? So the width of this rectangle is 1, which means the width of the rectangle directly below it is 1. So now what can I find? What do I? Go ahead. I'm sorry. The side part, which is the height. So what times 4G will get me to 8G? So if I plug in a 2 for this height, will 2 times 1 equal 2?
Yeah.
Yep, so the height is 2. Now you're ready to write your final answer. This time I didn't give you the blanks to fill in. But when we're doing rectangles, we write down our height times our width. So what's our height? How would I write my final answer? Parenthesis.
1G.
Do I have to have that 1 there?
No.
Nah, don't have to. Go ahead.
Plus 2. In that parentheses close. Plus.
No, parenthesis.
I got
Because it's height times width, okay? So what's your width?
4G plus. And then close parentheses.
And box it.
Probably not boxing up.
That is, yeah.
I just put
It just makes it easier for me to determine your final answer. That's it, okay? The only curveball I may throw at you
No.
after today's lesson is throw in some negatives, okay? Don't do that. We'll see.
Please don't do that.